criticism still applies. So, for example, they say representations, policy making only, blah, blah, blah. You should read your reps matter or turns the case cards that I was talking about a second ago. You should also read your arguments about how focus on government action obscures the way individuals contribute to the destruction of nature, right? Those are 2 additional links. What's sweet, is that even if they concede framework, you can still go for those links. You can still be like, we have 2 independent links. You focus on the government as opposed to individuals, or like you only focus on U.S. action, or you don't consider the way representations affect nature. Those are independent links that you can go for. But what you need to do is explain how their framework arguments link, right? Because they focus on government action. That detracts from what we do as individuals, or they don't think about representing nature as being important, and that links. And then, simple stones throw away from saying, oh, and our impact sure as hell outweigh fairness. They win a fairness impact, maybe. Maybe. They win that. We have a value to life impact. Done. Out of here. We have an extinction impact. Out of here. They win fairness. We said you make nuclear war more likely and make me want to kill myself. Go for the game. Cool? You're always going to outweigh fairness. It's a laughable impact. If you can apply your K to framework, all you then have to do is explain why your impacts are bigger than the fairness of the 2 people you're debating. Next, you want to say that even if they win their framework, your arguments can still be evaluated within the paradigm of a policymaker. In this instance, you would say, policymakers could use a little dose of humility. And then you remind the judge about how you turn the case. You're like, if they aren't humble, then they're going to just do stupid things like cap and trade, reduction of CO2 emissions, or think that we can hide things like uranium in mountains. It's totally going to be cool. No, these people are idiots. They need to be more humble. Our alternative can apply at the level of policymaking. Even if they win their arguments about why policymaking is good, you just say that policymakers should be humble. This isn't something that excludes your criticism. It's just a field in which your offense should be evaluated. Then you're going to be cross-examined in the 2NC. Largely do the 1NC strategies where all the questions are links, but on occasion, actually explain some stuff. At this stage of the debate, the app is already hosed. If they didn't get it in the 2AC, they're not going to get it now, right? And it'll help the judge understand your argument more. The only thing you should be wary of is explaining 2NC link cards that weren't in the 1NC, because they can respond to those fresh in the 1AR. So like maybe be a little bit confusing on those, make it a little harder to. But largely what you want to do in the 2NC process is be very clear so that the judge gets what's going on, and it becomes readily apparent that the 2AC was not responsive and that you have tons of both. Cool? We got 1 speech left. That's the 2NR. You got questions? For that? No?
Well, I have a tiny one. Earlier you were saying like wonder and like unpredictability is good, but then you said that if they ran like a severance mechanism, you would argue like, oh, well, that's unfair and that's not. I mean, like that's unpredictable, which is bad. So.
No, I get the tension. The way you want to deal with that is because like you will get teams that are like, fine, I can sever my half in the 2AR or whatever, right? The point that you want to make is simply that they linked more in their 1AC and 2AC, so that even if like the 2AR severs everything and the 2AR doesn't link, the 1AC and 2AC still didn't link, right? The only way for them to win that game is if they didn't give didn't give their first 2 speeches. Does that make any sense to you? All right, it doesn't seem like it does. All right, so like, maybe they can sever their whole app and adopt your alternative in the 2AR, right? You want to say 1, your first 2 speeches still linked, right? And 2, this isn't debating, this is conceding, right? Like if you just abandoned your app and started advocating what we're doing, you lost. It's not like you clever way out. No, you just admitted you fucking lost. This debate is over. And again, I'm like, I didn't realize how important this was until I was mid ramble. Being loud really works, right? So I went for like death good, unpredictability good every round, right? And this is an argument that I should have heard every time. Every time I was in the 2NR, I would pause and answer that argument even though they hadn't made it, right? If you preemptively say like, they might sever their app in the 2AR. If they do that, here's our answer, right? And you preempt it, the 2AR will never have the gall to actually do it, right? So say, they might try to do this. When that happens, you shouldn't think that that's some trickery. You should know that that means they're conceding. That means they just abandoned their app and are now advocating what we brought into the debate. The only difference is that we've been advocating it since our first speech. They're behind by 2 speeches. So double check, like the 1NC, 2NC, 1 1NR, 1AR, 2NR, 2AR, all good. The first two speeches that they gave aren't good. You still go pick. Kind of make sense? More sense? Okay. Also, feel free to say that there's a difference between the desire to make a debate round predictable and the desire to make the world predictable, right? Like they're definitely talking about nature as a whole, and your cards are specific to nature. So yeah, it would be like making nature known or manageable is very different from me expecting this debate to be manageable. But you're right to point out the tension. It's good. Good question. Any other questions? The 2NR is actually pretty simple because of how long my block rant was.